I have been activated off the norovirus injured reserve to come tonight to talk about the 2025 NFL Draft. But first, our guys, Handsome Jack.
Broadcasting live to Bills Mafia worldwide with Greg Tompsett and Aaron Quinn.
Welcome to the NFL. Doesn't matter what's happened before today. Today's a brand new day. It's a brand new season.
Your number one podcast for objective Buffalo Bills coverage. No matter where you are, we got you covered.
Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. You are joining your host, Greg Tompsett, along with my partner in crime, Aaron Quinn. Aaron, how healthy is your household?
Actually, knock on that mahogany behind you. Currently pretty healthy. And this is one of the few times where I'm super happy that we do this virtually. I want nothing to do with the norovirus. My wife got it over the winter. And dude, everything about it seems absolutely awful. I'm so sorry for you.
Yeah,
no, thank you. Yeah, don't want.
Yeah, my kids got sick Friday night into Saturday. We made it through Saturday and Sunday, and even through Monday. My daughter was getting better, went to soccer practice Monday night. My son was doing pretty good. And then we wake up Tuesday morning, and all of a sudden I start feeling it. And yesterday it whipped my ass. Today I'm okay. I'm still a little bubbly, and I haven't eaten too much, and I'm doing a little bit better, but I'd never had any sickness where you get like backaches and stuff like that. And I couldn't sleep last night because every time I turned, I could feel it in my back. And it's just
sure that's just not from being super old.
It might be because I just turned 44 and I'm old, but what are you going to do?
Blame it on the sickness. That's fine.
Yeah. It's easier. I hadn't even really thought about the fact that I'm just old. So thank you for that. Yeah.
Here to help, as our friends William Tarr might say.
So before we get into tonight's exercise, we are going to go through each of the 2025 NFL draft picks. There was a little bit of news here this week. We had our general manager pick a fight with the local radio station over a lack of wide receivers in the draft. And then today signed Elijah Moore, formerly of the Cleveland Browns, traded from the New York Jets, a very highly sought after draft prospect who has been middling in results. Although if you look at the list of like 10 quarterbacks he's played with since he's been in the NFL, it is a very low light list of performers. So, I enjoyed the hysterically entertaining interview from Brandon Beane as much as anybody, but I won't lie, I was a little surprised. I was a little out of character for Beane's normally pretty buttoned up with stuff like that. I was a little surprised that he let his probably true feelings out for, getting called out for the fact that they produced the highest scoring team in the league last year and first team in NFL history to score 30 rushing touchdowns or 30 passing touchdowns. But I was a little surprised to hear him actually let out his true feelings.
I mean, he's a pretty straight shooter in a lot of these ways. And, he's cussed before, not in the same manner, not like directed at somebody, but he's cussed in press conferences. He's pretty loose with that stuff. I listened back to it and the initial reaction was like, whoa, he came at him. And then after it was kind of like, I kind of understand where he's coming from. And I don't know that I think Jeremy and Joe maybe took it as he was coming at them directly and because he was on the show and referenced like, hey, I just heard you guys talking about it. But I think it is just one, I know, and I think we all know, they do see everything, whether or not they react to everything, they see it all. Boyko, the PR guy, is definitely showing McDermott and Beane every single piece of information. These guys are the notebooks that they keep and the meticulous things. They know every inch of what is being talked about their team. It's just like Josh Allen. Josh Allen's like, oh, I don't pay attention to all that social media. He sees it all. They all see this stuff.
If anything, if you're, Adam Henry, isn't that like the first thing you're going to post in the wide receiver room? Yeah. Is that like, hey, just to let you know, nobody thinks you guys are good enough.
Correct.
They think that we don't have enough talent in this room.
Yeah, no, I think they use it for all those types of things. There's a lot of reasons why they look at all this stuff, but he did field some questions right after the draft about it. So I think he was just like, okay, like, enough's enough. Like, and I think that the timing of the news of Moore's visit plus the
Those things
interview,
aren't he didn't schedule a visit 6
correct.
minutes after the interview. Like, those were scheduled before the draft took
Just like
place.
he
Like,
talked about, yeah. And we talk about it all the
they
time
didn't buy
that
that
when
flight that morning.
no, we talk about it all the time in these free agent in the free agent process is like, oh, hey, there's going to be some of these guys where if they aren't able to get something in the draft, they probably have some stuff lined up. We talk about it a lot
Yes.
with corners this year with Rasul Douglas and even the
Sounds
Stephon
like Russell
Gilmore type.
Douglas might go to Miami because of that exact same thing. They didn't pick a corner, so
Yeah.
now he might sign to Miami.
Yeah, absolutely. And my thing too is like none of this stuff works in absolutes. And Brandon Beane has also always said that no matter what the state of his roster, outside of the quarterback position, no matter how good he feels a room is, if he has opportunities to add talent to it, he is going to add talent to it. So just signing Elijah Moore is fun. I think we can get into what we project for him in this roster. And I think it is a fun signing. And I think there's some level of excitement to bring in a player that hasn't met with the hype that he came out with. And this is a good opportunity for him to meet that hype. But I think that some people will say, oh, this is a response to him not to agreeing with WGR that the room wasn't good enough. But Brandon Beane has shown time and time again, no matter what these rooms are like, he is always, if there's an opportunity to add, he'll add. I won't be shocked if he picks up the phone and calls Green Bay and tries to add to this room if he has the opportunity to. Like, he's going to continue to do it. I don't think that one move proves some other point in any way. And an Elijah Moore move absolutely doesn't. Like that's for this time of year. I think too much will be made of that in this instance.
Yeah. So, regardless of who the player is, he was pretty transparent on the interview as well, in that, like, he was kind of surprised they didn't pick a wide receiver. He said we had plenty of wide receivers up there. I think a lot of the guys pointed out that I think 7 of their top 30 visits were wide receivers. So, like, there was an intention to get a wide receiver. He talked about the fact that the board was planned to get a wide receiver, but the guys that they valued went earlier than what they thought. And there wasn't ever anyone that when it got to their pick was the best player on the board, or like we saw them do with like a Deion Walker, where it was at a point where he was sticking out and like, hey, we need, or TJ Sanders, where he's sticking out, we need to move up and get that guy. That scenario never presented itself where the last guy of a tier was at wide receiver to be able to go over and make that move. So the exactly what you talked about, whether it was, say, they missed out and Matthew Golden was the player available at 30 and they missed out on cornerback, maybe that phone call is to Rasul Douglas or is to Asante Samuel Jr. or is to whoever veteran cornerback. They had several of those lined up. Probably we saw a handful of defensive tackles sign around the league this year. If we don't draft 2 of them, that's probably the move for them today. So he probably had several of those contingency plans lined up, and that, yes, at some point, was it probably, well, all right, if we haven't gotten a guy by here, I know I have Elijah Moore in our back pocket. I'm not going to reach on a guy in the 5th or 6th round that it's not really going to matter.
To get a guy.
I'll just sign Moore because and now we'll talk about him. He just turned 25. He's going to be 25 this entire season. So he's literally younger than a couple of the guys who were in the draft. Has played 4 seasons with a horrible list of quarterbacks, has never caught passes from anyone any good, and the only decent production he had was the couple stretches he had at the end of the season with Joe Flacco 2 years ago and the end of the season with Jameis Winston this past year, where he actually did show some of that downfield speed and separation. So his metrics in the NFL have been pretty poor, but it's also been, I think last year he had like 37% of his passes were catchable, or something to say, like 47% of his passes were uncatchable, something crazy like that. So I think if you're going to talk yourself into it, the fact that there's a high draft pedigree, a lot of different draft experts, I know Matt Waldman, who does the reception perception, he's been a crazy fan of Elijah Moore forever and continually frustrated that he hasn't gotten a chance to play with a good quarterback. Joe Marino, lots of others around our space were big fans of him coming out. Bruce Nolan was talking about him as well. And then you go to a space where played in terrible offenses, 3 different offensive coordinators in the last 4 years, terrible quarterbacks the whole time. If you're going to talk yourself into the fact of, hey, maybe there's a chance here, that's the path. But it also is basically the same bucket of 3 guys that we have. You're telling yourself the same thing for Elijah Moore, for Curtis Samuel and for Josh Palmer. All of their production the last 3 years is almost identical. You might as well be looking at the same player over the last 4 years, their overall production. Different scenarios. Palmer was because he was behind Mike Williams and Keenan Allen and never featured and in a very run-heavy offense. Curtis Samuel, more similar to Moore, where it's terrible quarterback play. Now, Samuel was because he couldn't stay healthy. Elijah Moore actually hasn't missed a game in 3 years. He's played every single game the last 3 years. He missed a couple games his rookie year, but the last 3 years he's played every single game. So I think that there's reason to be excited. I'll throw a little wet blanket on it here. He did get a contract that says up to $5 million. Last year at this same time, Lyle Collins signed a deal that was worth up to $6 million. Marquez Valdez-Scantling signed a deal that was worth up to $4.5 million. Collins didn't even make the 53. MVS made the 53, was healthy and active a couple times and cut on October 15th. So I think there's a little window of hope where hey, I think there's a chance Moore could even push Curtis Samuel for wide receiver 4. I don't think he can crack into the top 3. I think the top 3 is pretty set with Shakir, Palmer, and Coleman. I think that there's probably not higher than 50-50, but a chance, probably a health-related chance that he could end up with wide receiver 4 to kind of push Samuel for that. But I think there's a chance he could at least make the roster, or is a higher likelihood than a Laviska Shenault, and probably 50-50 with Terrell Shavers, maybe 60-40 in Moore's favor.
The hive will come after you.
But that's the kind that's where I see Moore coming in. I think he now maybe gets a slight head start against Terrell Shavers, but not even a big head start. Probably 60-40 for that wide receiver 5 spot.
That Curtis Samuel contract's a little difficult also to get out of when we're talking about contracts, right? You're not just
as a quick for the details on that, because I got into it with Mike Clay for a minute when we were talking about this, because he all of a sudden yesterday WGR is making it out that we have no receivers. Today Mike Clay was like, "Well, now adding Elijah Moore, there's probably not enough room for all these guys." And I was joking that we went from no receivers to too many wide receivers in 24 hours. Unfortunately, Curtis Samuel was given a 2-year deal with no outs 2 years ago. So this is the second year. We have a $12 million dead cap hit to get rid of him because we didn't pay for our full share last year. Even if we do a post June 1st release and designate it post June 1st, there's still zero cap benefit. We still eat just as much, and there's no savings to do that. So either we have Curtis Samuel on the roster and hope we get something from him, or we pay the exact same amount and just don't have him on the roster. There's no financial benefit from what's there. JG here saying Matt Harmon is also famous for his love of Curtis Samuel. So I will say, if anything, the kind of receiver that Matt Harmon likes obviously aligns with the kind of receiver that Brandon Beane and the Bills front office likes, because a handful of his very, very favorite project guys are the guys we keep signing.
Yeah. Or for Harmon, it's like the Dane Jacksons and Levi Wallace's for me. You fall in love with the adequate.
He has a type.
Yeah, he has a type. Here, to me, there's a couple things. I don't even know that the Bills believe in these ideas of one wide receiver, 1, 2, 3. I know that everybody eats mantra got kind of a little maybe overplayed. I think you can clearly say Khalil Shakir's the best wide receiver and probably wide receiver 1, but I really don't think. I think if they roll all these guys out, which I think they will, I could see a pretty even split rotation between a Curtis Samuel and an Elijah Moore, and a pretty good split between a Keon Coleman and a Palmer, and just having a rotation. They know they're going to play football deep into January. They know they want to keep these guys healthy. They know that there's only one ball to go around. And I think you can do some really cool things formationally with these different tools. Now you've got 2 guys in a Palmer and a Coleman who I think you can line up on the outside, who I think can win at the point.
Real quick, John here asking about that, and I know it's come up. Everyone's assumption is because Moore is 5'9" and change, 180, that he's a slot only guy. And I do think it makes sense. A lot of people think he'd be better there. He's actually played 54% of his snaps on the outside in the NFL in 4 years. So 3 out of his 4 years, he played significantly more on the outside than the slot. One season, he played about 60-40 slot versus outside. A couple of the seasons, it was like 70-30 outside to inside. So whether that's his best usage or not, I don't know enough to know. But as far as how he's been used in the NFL, it's been way more outside than inside, which was surprising.
Yeah, I do think that's part of the problem that he's had in the NFL of not being able to be consistent. But here's the thing. I don't believe, as much as people want to talk about certain types of wide receivers, X, Y, Z, whatever you want to do, I don't actually think Brady really believes in that. I think he wants body types and abilities, but I think that he's got a group here with Shakir, Samuel, and more who can do both things. Now, same idea with Khalil Shakir. People like this was the whole conversation we had last year when I wanted Ladd McConkey. Everybody's like, well, we already have Khalil Shakir. And he can do multiple things. You can run out a formation with another slot receiver and put Shakir on the outside. He can do both those things. I think Moore can do it, and I think Samuel can too. Are they all probably better out of the slot where you can get them off the line of scrimmage and create that separation right out of the gate and do some things behind the line of scrimmage? Yes, I think they're all better at that, but they can do some things that are going to force defensive coordinators to get some more speed on the field and not really be sure what you're going to do. If you line those guys up in, you have like a Palmer and then Shakir and Moore behind him, like that's a kind of a nightmare for a defensive coordinator in a trips bunch type sense. So I think this just gives the Bills a little bit more, and it's insurance on Samuel not being able to stay healthy, that you still have that type sitting in that wide receiver room. And even if this Samuel is healthy, where he hasn't shown the ability to stay healthy through a full season, this allows you to take some of those reps and not need him to be out there every single snap. You have two very similar type players that you can do a lot of things on the offense with. So I think this just builds up the depth and kind of goes into the idea that they think of wide receiver a little bit positionless.
Yeah. Well, and to add that, people way too often apply size as the only factor of whether you're a slot or a outside receiver. Khalil Shakir is 3 inches taller and 20 pounds heavier than Elijah Moore and the exact same size as Stephon Diggs.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, if Khalil Shakir is a slot only, then Stephon Diggs was a slot only. Like, yes, we use it. And like you said, maybe to his detriment, Elijah Moore should have been played in the slot more, and that Khalil Shakir surely is better in the slot than outside, but it doesn't mean he can't. In the same way that Elijah Moore has played 54% of the snaps outside, he probably could be doing that as well if we needed to, and having more movable chess pieces where, hey, on some snaps, maybe we do put those guys out there and then, have somebody else inside at a different point. But ultimately, all of these things come down to the investments that have already been made.
Yeah.
There was no readily available wide receiver that we were going to acquire who's better than what we think Keon Coleman can be. Like the receiver we need Keon Coleman to be and the receiving threat we need Dalton Kincaid to be, there was nobody readily available to us that was going to be better than that. Now, that doesn't mean they'll do that. That doesn't mean that both of them will become the players that we drafted them to be and that we hope that they can be. But there was nobody readily available to us. We were not, at no point were we going to trade for T. Higgins or, make some huge splash signing or go, again, trade up in the draft to go get Travis Hunter or something like that. Like just that this draft class wasn't built that way. There were, Matthew Golden went ahead of us. He's not even that kind of receiver.
Yeah.
And I don't know that Ted McMillan is terribly different than Keon Coleman. Like they're kind of similar players. So a lot of those different guys that are available, would have been much lower in last year's draft class. I think Ted McMillan would have been right there with where Keon Coleman was drafted last year in like the end of the first round, not a top 8 pick if he was in this draft class. And I think that the same thing, like the free agents this year, there weren't that many good guys. We just didn't. Thank you, Sophia. We appreciate you. There just weren't that many players available that we already had our eggs in that basket of our last 2 first picks were Dalton Kincaid and Keon Coleman. We need them to be what they're supposed to be. And this is the year we find that out. And then if it's not, we pivot there. But we couldn't subvert that as the need right now. We need to find out that they're what they're supposed to be.
And I think honestly, that was a lot of where Brandon Beane's frustration came out of, is standing up for his guys, right? Like,
Yeah.
he does it the way that this wide receiver group has been talked about, and what this group has been talked about, probably is frustrating to people in the building, because it has been good. And there is some nuance into maybe why some of the guys that they recently drafted haven't fully hit their potential yet. But I got a hot take for you, Greg. And the guy that everybody's looking for, I think, is in the building. I've been high on him for years, and he's still trending. I think Khalil Shakir can be Stephon Diggs like. Stephon Diggs didn't become Stephon Diggs until year 5, age 25, right? Like,
And I've made the comp a couple times. If you
year
go
4 or
side by
5.
side on the efficiency metrics, like per opportunity, he is Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Yeah.
Now Amon-Ra St. Brown gets funneled a lot more targets, but the way they produce, what they do with the ball afterwards, the efficiency at which they catch the ball and produce, get open downfield, he's not like, I know that a lot of his numbers got inflated by those bubble screens last year, but that didn't
He still
change
did something with it.
Correct. And it didn't change the fact that didn't mean that it's one thing when a receiver only does that.
Yeah.
Like, there was some Curtis Samuel stuff where, like, hey, it was pretty much only the manufactured touches, but Shakir was getting open downfield also as a threat there. And then, yes, we did manufacture touches for him in the screen game, but like, that's what a lot of Amon-Ra St. Brown's game was. So yeah, there's a chance we see another significant step forward.
I don't think
him.
We've seen that ceiling yet. And I think everybody's looking for the breakout from these other guys. And I don't think we've seen the full breakout from Khalil Shakir yet. That's my only point.
I like it. All right, it's time to pivot to the main topic of the show today, which will be the folks in the chat are going to have to help us. We have 2 answers. We know that each draft, we're going to go through each draft pick, and we picked one undrafted free agent to add into the mix here, maybe a second one, we'll see. So some of them are going to be graded as here to help. A here to help draft pick means it was better value than what we expected, or filled a need that we really, really needed, or was even a better scheme fit than what we expected. And then on the opposite end of that, we're going to have pump the brakes, where, hey, either it was kind of a reach for where we took them, or it didn't really fit a need, or it wasn't really a perfect scheme fit, or the kind of player that we would normally want to take. And then we have one in the middle, and Aaron obviously likes to talk about adequate defensive back play. I don't want to use the term like fine or good, because it seems like has a negative connotation. So let us know in the chat, what should we call like the Goldilocks? Like, hey, this was good. Like, this was a good, nice pick. Let us know what you guys think should be the middle term for that. If it's not, plus value, or maybe something we're not quite as excited about between the two. But we'll work our way around between those and go through each of the draft picks of what we have as it comes along. Are you ready?
No, but I'm going to do it anyway.
We're going to go anyways?
Yeah.
I like it. All right. So obviously, with the draft class, we had the 9 picks that we fully kept throughout the draft, plus 1 UDFA. So we're going to go through 10 names for today's pad. And we appreciate here this draft had everything: first round corners for Bruce, large humans for Greg, 17th round corners for Aaron. Landon Jackson's great value. Happy offseason, fellas. We appreciate you, Pad, and you're also always fantastic. So we're going to go through 10 guys here in the draft class. Shout out to the Bills' awesome social media team. Some of the graphics I used here tonight, in addition to RAS, are from those folks. But we'll start out with the first one. The first pick, 30th overall, Max Hairston. Again, I'm going to give some reference just because I try to use some of the different areas. I talked a lot about the consensus big board. He was 34th there. Dane Brugler and the Beast had him 35th. PFF had him there at 43. The average of those of 37. I think most people had him as cornerback 4, cornerback 5-ish. That's right where he went. So I had this just starting off as good. Like, I didn't think this was amazing from a value standpoint. It obviously checked the box for our biggest need, so I thought that was a big plus. I liked a lot of what Greg Cosell had to say about him. He wasn't the one that I thought they were going to pick. Like many folks at Cover One, I thought that Trey Amos seemed to check a lot of the previous boxes of what we had, but I think he's the definition of really good. Like, this is a good pick. He was appropriate at the value of where he went. He was at a position of need. Maybe not our stereotypical history of the scheme fit of what we've seen, but a nice player, and honestly a skill set we haven't had in a long time, having literally the fastest guy in the entire draft.
Yeah, I thought This one was an interesting one to me because pre-draft, I liked the tape, didn't feel like he was a fit, not schematically, but in like the what they talk about the DNA and how he plays football. And I know that there was a lot of talk about the shoulder injury and the tackling, but the tackling wasn't great even the year before. And
Yeah.
we heard them come out and talk about tackling. That's why they really didn't go after an Asante Samuel. And honestly, Hairston to me feels kind of like a Asante Samuel type, like super athletic. I think he is a good zone corner. I think he actually fits. That was one of the things that kind of bothered me after this draft was people associated this RAS card and this speed with, oh, the Bills definitely want to play more man. This is a zone corner through and through.
Yeah.
And this is a guy that uses that speed. And honestly, I love the hips.
That's how he breaks on the ball is that
Correct.
speed. He can float in zone and then break on the ball with crazy acceleration, which you obviously see on the rest card here.
Yeah, I think people associate like long and slow with zone corner, and honestly, you really want that ability to break. And the one I don't think is he is the physical prowess to play that zone corner at a high level right now. Can he get there? Maybe. So that was that. This one is adequate or good for me. They took one of the guys. They attacked a position of need. They took what they obviously felt, and like you said, a lot of the other guys felt was cornerback 4. I did like other guys on the board still as better fits for overall what I expected the Bills to do, and so that's why it's good for me. And I don't want to give anything away about later in the draft, but I kind of have a little bit of a hot take on this one. Is I think we might have a potential of another Kyer Elam Christian Benford situation come out of this draft after watching some of the guys. Well, we'll just leave it there for now.
Interesting. All right. Let's move on to the next one. The next one at the 41st pick, we traded up to get South Carolina defensive tackle TJ Sanders, a player that was, overall ranked a bit lower. This was one where when they did the trade up, I thought I had an idea of who they were going for. Actually, I won't lie. I thought who they were going for is the guy who we picked next, so which will speak to the value from the different spots where they were. Consensus big board, Sanders is at 59. Dane Brugler had him at 70. PFF had him at 54, an average of 61 for those three. So a solid 20 picks later than where we got him. Honestly, to most people from the outside, it looked like, hey, why didn't we just stay at 56 and pick him? Why do we have to trade up to 41 to be able to do that? I'll give them credit that they did see a run coming. There had been a little bit of a break, and there were no defensive tackles or defensive linemen that went. D linemen went with like 7 of the next 11 picks after the Sanders, or including the Sanders pick, 6 more in the next 10, but it was 7 out of 11 there. So they picked the spot right of needing to get ahead of a run. He wasn't the guy that I thought they would pick, but in fairness, if they just flipped around the 2 picks of who they made in the second and third, it probably would have looked like appropriate value in that order. So I'm going to put this as fine and good. Like, I'm not going to give this as a plus of here to help. It's probably a borderline pump the brakes just because it's one of the matter of fact, it is the lowest net value for where we picked versus where a player was ranked across all the other boards altogether. So, in fairness, this is probably a pump the brakes pick just in the fact that it's the lowest value out of any of the 9 that we picked.
I have it as a help. I have this as a here to help. Honestly, like, we do a lot of the draft work ourselves. We look at all that stuff ourselves. I don't care when ultimately where guys get picked, what the perceived value prior to the draft is. I probably should have looked a little harder at this. I think I got suckered into the idea of the type that I was hoping the Bills would go for versus the type that the Bills actually want. Right.
Yeah.
And same with this Elijah Moore conversation.
Disruption. That's it. They very clearly told us all they care about is disruption.
Yeah. And honestly, I love this in the sense that I see young Daquan Jones in this pick, that a guy that I think you can throw 10 pounds on him real quick and easy. He's already, the people I saw in the chat are saying he was at 305. He already talked about being over that right now.
Yeah, he told us at his South Carolina pro day he was 305 and he was comfortable playing 305 to 310. And I know, this is something Eric Turner confirmed for us. Daquan Jones came into the league at Tennessee at 320. He has not been that weight in Buffalo the entire time. He's been around 305, 307 the whole time he's played in Buffalo. So like TJ Sanders is already about the size of Daquan. And now Daquan Jones is very strong for his size. He plays very powerfully for his size. But TJ Sanders is already about that size.
Yeah. And on this RAS card, he gets knocked for being at 287. So he's not there either. Was that 297? So
297 at the combine because he tried to run his bed. He did. He put up great times.
Combine.
His explosive times were great, but yeah,
Sure.
he said he was 305 at the pro day.
Yeah, so I like this. I think that he can slot in with. I know Brandon Bean said that he wouldn't necessarily be that one tech. I don't totally believe that. I think Sean McDermott is going to rotate him in with DaQuan Jones and play him at both spots. He seems to be a guy that can do both those things, and I think that I think they still believe in DaQuan Jones enough, even though the fans have lost faith in him, that he can get you through this year. And this is a great veteran spot for Sanders to learn behind here. And I think going forward, this is a guy that can fill that role for them. And I like the fit. I think it is a good fit. It's disruptive. And to your point, where you said they told us what they like, and he fits what they like. And so what we necessarily want to see them do might not have come true in this draft, but what they like, they got.
Yeah, and we saw some of the clips that Anthony and I went on in our instant reaction show. Like when his movement is on and he understands what's going on, he literally like teleports across the screen. Like his lateral quickness at his size is insane. Where like Anthony described, like he had to go back and watch a couple times because it almost seemed like the film was glitching because it seemed like you missed a frame in between because he was here and all of a sudden way over there, like 2 gaps over instantly. And it was ridiculous in how they put that together. So,
And this goes into the next pick too. Like we do want to stop the run. I get that, and that has been the Achilles heel of this Bills defense. But don't kid yourselves. The NFL is 100% about quarterback EPA and disrupting quarterback EPA. Like
yes,
those are the two
100%.
things that lead to victories in this league. And so that's where you start, and then everything else is secondary.
So going into the next pick, Landon Jackson was picked number 72 with the trade down from 62. We traded up 15 spots from 56 to 49 and down 10 spots from 62 to 72. And we took Arkansas defensive end Landon Jackson, who was a player I think frequently, I want to say worried, but seen as kind of like the backup plan floor pick at 30. I saw him thrown out there a couple times as a possibility. Like, man, if everything else goes the wrong way, you better watch out. The Bills like Landon Jackson a lot. So after we got Hairston and we saw the trade up, I was like, oh, they're trading up to get Landon Jackson. And when they took TJ Sanders, I was like, oh, well, that's interesting. I kind of thought that they would have taken Jackson just because they showed so much interest in him and he seemed to check so many boxes. And then I just kind of dismissed that as the scenario as it was happening. And then as it went down, I was like, oh, well, Jackson's still there. So when they got him at 72, this was easily my biggest here to help as far as over the combination of all three things. So overall value, he was ranked, 53rd in the consensus board, 47, Dane Brugler, 39 on PFF. So an average of like almost a full round ahead of where he was picked. Pretty much consensus across the board is a middle second round pick, and they got him later in their middle of the third. Scheme fit as far as his ability there. I know Greg Cosell talked about the fact that he thought he's already a better pass rusher than AJ Epinesa and has the ability to play the run as well, and is a little quicker around the corner than what normally a 6'6", 264-pound guy is. He's not bendy. He's not Von Miller. I'm not trying to say that he's some bendy edge, but when you see, especially obviously the one set of clips against Will Campbell, who is the number 4 overall pick and one of the better left tackles in the draft, and he just straight up beat him bending around the edge a couple times in those and closed for a sack. That kind of production is interesting to be able to have that kind of frame, the elite athleticism. Switch over to the RAS card here. It's just very, very interesting to see a guy 6'6", 264 with a 40.5-inch vertical and a 10-foot broad jump running a 4.68. Like that shows that elite explosion does show, because when he does explode off the line and beat you with his first step, he can turn the corner and get a sack. And that's, getting that kind of possibility here is really, really interesting. We talked about the fact that we're going to miss Michael Hoyt for the first 6 games. Joey Bosa probably needs to be on a snap count. We're probably on the last year with AJ Epinesa. This is to get this kind of upside with the dart throw in the 3rd round is really nice value.
Yeah, I like this pick. I have it as a help as well here, again, for the reasons you mentioned. And I do think one of the biggest benefits is what you just said with allowing Joey Bosa to not have to. Like if he comes in and is the type of player that I think he can be, even as a rookie, as part of this rotation, I think that that's going to help Bosa be able to kind of settle back into a rotational role. And it also helps some of the other guys in that. I think that this whole defensive line is going to have some pretty big expectations. I might have to pump my own brakes this summer because some of these guys are their projections, right? With the TJ Sanders and adding in a Landon Jackson here and projecting what Bosa can be, hopefully on that high end of what we have seen out of him or close to that high end. But if everybody kind of hits their high ends of their ceilings, whatever curve you want to put that on, this could be a really fun year for the defensive line and really the position that has seen the most turnaround this year. And this is the fourth or fifth offseason we've seen where Brandon Beane has aggressively attacked, whether it was the offensive line and transitioning that to the line we have now this year, really focusing on this defensive line. And I like these two pieces in the second and third round here, to whether it's just adding the depth to the rotation of good young players with high ceilings and turning into potential starters. I really like this one. I think it's here to help. I think you're going to get immediate impact plus long-term answer at that position opposite Greg Rousseau.
Yeah, it's really exciting to see that. That's really nice value. And like I said, that the perfect marriage of all three: scheme fit, overall value, and the actual production, that checked all the metrics boxes.
Yeah.
All right, now for probably the highest variance pick of the entire group, the Bills traded up at pick 109. They traded for pick 109. They traded away pick 109, and they traded back for 109. It's weird that pick had a lot of transactions involved in it. And as Charles here says, Greg, we got large humans. Preach and Jackson Walker, pass the plate, take my money. Deone Walker is literally, like, without joking about our friend Watson in Florida, Deone Walker was legitimately like the largest draftable prospect in the pool, 6'7", 345, and actually like 6'7" and a half. He was 6'7" and 3/8, I think was the technical measurement. Just an absolutely enormous human. Obviously, there's going to be a lot to be said about the inconsistency, the high pad level. He's got a kind of a top heavy build with weird skinny legs and an enormous upper torso. What you're banking on is the fact that he played as a 18-year-old true freshman in the SEC and put up impressive metrics. As a 19-year-old sophomore, that's where guys like Greg Cosell and others, if you go back, I think I found 5 early mock drafts from last year. 4 of them had him as a top 10 pick, and the 5th one had him 15th. So coming out of that sophomore year, he was seen as the best defensive tackle in the class and a guy that isn't supposed to move like that at a special size. He then was inconsistent and had a mediocre junior year. Now, it came out that afterwards that he was playing with a stress fracture in his back that they didn't really understand and was causing him a lot of pain, missing practices, and a lot of different things there. People who, like me, who are fans of it, are going to say, oh, well, that's why. And we're just going to fix that and go back to the sophomore year production. People who are, leery on the pick are going to say, well, are we sure we can fix that? Is that just who he is now? Is that a function of his build? Is he, in the shape that he should be? Did he take his, workouts seriously? I will say some of the things on the legs is just literally the perception of looking at a human who's 6'7" and a half. He's really, really tall. When you look at some of the ones, like his legs aren't that tiny, but he doesn't have big calves. Like he definitely has small, the lower part, his upper, his thighs and his quads are normal size, but he does have weirdly small calves. So it's going to be interesting to see what he can turn into, but obviously getting a guy who is absolutely enormous. I think Eric said it pretty well. It's a lot of Jordan Phillips 2.0. It's when the flash plays happen, he can absolutely destroy a pocket and just sack the quarterback with the guard and just throw him into him like a toy. And then he'll also have snaps where he gets washed out like 3 gaps over because he guessed wrong and tried to swim and got like chucked halfway through the swim. So I'm obviously incredibly excited. I can't wait to find out what jersey number they give him, because I'm going to order a custom jersey with his number that just says large human across the back instead of Walker. But I finally got my large human. There's nothing you can say that can hurt me. He's obviously here to help.
I have this as a pump the brakes. I do. I am happy for you that you got a large human. For me, and I'm hoping not. One, I want to put it out there that I hope I'm wrong. I want this to work out. I want him to be a really good player for the Bills. There is some intriguing things when watching some of the tape that Eric broke down the way they lined him up in different spots. And like you said, when he hits those high end pass rushes, he really is explosive. And there is a lot of athleticism that isn't present on this RAS card that shows itself in that size where he can really get in and be a disruptive player, and those long limbs. We know the Bills love that type of length and what that can cause in terms of havoc. For me, pad level on linemen is a real concern for me. But I'm trying to pump my own brakes while pumping the brakes on this, because I was kind of saying a lot of the same things about Spencer Brown. The pad level I didn't like, the back injury on such a tall person I didn't like, the skinny frame in the legs I didn't like a lot of these things. And I was super wrong. I may never have been more wrong than I was on Spencer Brown.
We're going to need to hope that we get that same workout plan for Spencer Brown with Deone Walker. If they can get Deone Walker to fall in love with the weight room, I think we have something really special.
Maybe. Yeah. I do have concerns. I'm not a doctor. Super large guys like that carry a lot of the weight in their gut. The back concerns me. I don't know how often this is going to be a problem.
I don't even know what a pars fracture is, but it sounds terrible.
It doesn't sound good to me, dude. I pull a muscle on my back and I can't even move. So I don't even want to know what a fracture is like. But it seems to have led to maybe some of the high pad level issues. I don't know if he'll ever be a low pad level guy at that size. And honestly, I don't like Jordan Phillips' game. I never have. I understand like sometimes he makes some cool plays, and he's even made some big plays for the Bills. I wasn't a fan in general of Jordan Phillips, and I didn't think that the Bills needed another one, but I'm hoping it works out, and I'm hoping that he's better than Jordan Phillips without all
just got the younger version.
Extras. Yeah.
Yeah, and in fairness, at no point was Jordan Phillips ever seen as a top 10 pick in the draft. Like that, true. Those reviews, those were not like, watched 5 highlights and threw something together. Those are from like legitimate draft scouts who watched his film, and that if the 2024 season never happened, and it was like the COVID season where like Gregory Rousseau sat out, he would have been picked like Gregory Rousseau. He would have been picked purely on the measurables, the early film, and the projection, and he would have been a first-round pick. Now, maybe he wouldn't have been top 10, but if like the 2024 season never happened, there would have been sufficient film of 2 seasons of SEC pass rushing from that size and that structure, and he would have been a first-round pick that would have gone there. So at least you have that to hold on to hope that there's a chance of doing that. But again, the fact that you need the medical development to manage the back, that you need him to get serious about the weight room, that, we got to joke that, we got to be serious. He's never going to have like big legs, but hopefully he can get a little bit there. We've seen, and if you look at Gregory Rousseau from the time he walked into the building versus what Gregory Rousseau looks like now, they're like 2 different humans. Spencer Brown, the same thing. Like a lot of guys transform their body as they become pros to be able to go through there. So, and I see a couple people commenting that Jerry Ostrowski did some analysis on the situation and his body needs to build up for the back injury, possibly had him talking about that same injury for there. And Jerry played an extensive NFL career from that standpoint. So, we'll see where that comes from, but hopefully something that can work out. And obviously I'm going to hope for it just because I got my large human. So
yeah, no, I'm going to hope for it because the more good players the Bills get, the better.
Yeah. So the next one that I will tell you, I always have a good feeling because I got multiple swear word laden messages from my Ohio State fans around here that when we got Jordan Hancock, Shane, my friend Shane specifically, and Rich were swearing at me because we stole their guy. They love him. This is a guy who has a lot of Taron Johnson to his game. I'm not gonna, that's unfair to him. That's far too lofty. But if you want to go for like, not the most impressive overall athlete, but plays bigger than their size, throws his body around, tackles with a veracity you don't normally see at those measurables, has versatility that he could probably play nickel or safety. Brandon Beane talked about the fact that he could be a safety. He was a guy who was ahead of where we picked, but most people had him as like a 5th round pick. Consensus was 165. Dane Brugler was 149. PFF was 151. We got him at 170. So we got him at a net value, but he was in general ranked around where we were because he's not a phenomenal athlete. So I had this one as good. I didn't put it as here to help, but I have the outside chance that I think there's a real possibility that when we talked about, hey, we have to think about the fact that we may need a post, Taron Johnson world strategy. Like, he's turning 29. He plays with a very physical style of football. Hopefully we get 2-3 more years from Taron Johnson. But if God forbid we don't, we might need to start investing in developing that. I kind of think this pick was that investment to start developing that, behind the scenes. Nothing's going to push Taron Johnson off the field. When he's healthy, he's the guy playing. But maybe now, if he does miss a little bit of time, maybe it's not quite the drop off it was before.
I love this pick. It honestly might be my favorite pick. And what's crazy is I didn't do any work on him pre-draft. And I said it right when we drafted him. I was like, I don't know. I have no takes. I'm going to go dig in. And I did. And I've loved it so far. And I'm going to keep watching. And in that way, it feels like Taron Johnson. I did no work on Taron Johnson. And then as soon as I dug in, I was like, I freaking love this guy. This is awesome. Yeah. I love
just
this
the tackling alone. The tackling alone's awesome.
I love that they just list him as DB. I saw everybody and be like, the Bills have all these cornerbacks. And it's like, no. This guy, I hear what you're saying for maybe like the long term, he can be the Taron Johnson backup. But right now, I think Cam Lewis is on notice. I think this is a utility back that can do multiple things, be a special teamer, which they are definitely going to need, because I don't think the wide receiver room, when you're the 5 they're carrying, are not going to be playing a number of special teams. So you're going to need to make up for some of that elsewhere. I think he can come in immediately and be a really high end special teams player. Absolutely love this. I think the Bills are going to find ways to get him on the field. They're running more of the dime look. I think there's opportunity for him in that dime. That what is most intriguing about Cam Lewis is that ability to be a game day active roster piece that can play special teams,
backup nickel, backup safety,
backup everything, and the defensive back. Not a lot of teams have a guy like that. I think that you can mold Jordan Hancock in that way, and I think that he's bigger than Cam Lewis, and I think that he's got a much higher ceiling, in my opinion, than Cam Lewis.
Well, athleticism here, talk about so the places where special athletes get lost in a niche role are Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State. You look here, and if I told you, like, hey, look at this guy and his measurables here, and it was a full-time starter for a national championship team, you go, he must be a first-round pick. You're like, no, he's actually just played nickel for them, and like took him a while to get onto the field. But yeah, but if you look back, it's because they've had like 2 first-round pick cornerbacks every year for the past, every other year for the past handful of years. So yeah, it's as Patton's saying here, wait, a 9.8 Rass isn't a good, that's a phenomenal athlete for where he is. So it just kind of shows that maybe there's even a little bit more upside here. And I don't want to be, this is silly to say, but the same kind of things where when you identified Terry McLaurin coming out was that, like, hey, it was kind of weird because he was kind of like wide receiver 3 for a lot of his time at Ohio State, but he was actually a really good athlete, played special teams, and the potential was there for more. I'm not saying that Jordan Hancock's like the Terry McLaurin of receivers, but those kind of scenarios happen at the Big Ten programs where you have other 5-star guys coming in who are playing like, hey, you just kind of have to play your niche and figure out how to play your role. And then you see that, oh, he was actually a phenomenal athlete while doing that. It could be pretty fun.
Yeah, I hate Ohio State, but they do have a good program, and I love Big Ten football's like, I know everybody loves SEC football and all that stuff, but if you want guys that are like make up the Bills DNA, you go look in the Big Ten, and those are Bills DNA guys. You got to have it to play DB in the Big Ten.
Yeah, 100%. All right, the next pick is maybe one of the most fun ones. If I told you that they drafted a big, angry, redheaded blocking tight end, and it was just basically like the reincarnation of Lee Smith, you would say, okay, I'm in. And that's what they did. They took Jackson Hawes. Jackson Hawes is 6'5", 260 pounds, with some of the most fun blocking film that you're ever going to see. I think he caught 16 footballs. He, like a guy we're going to bring up later, was a 4-year player at Yale. So obviously an incredibly intelligent young man. And then after graduated with an economics degree from Yale, transferred because he knew he had a chance to play in the NFL, wanted to play at a Big Ten program, went to Georgia Tech, beat the crap out of a bunch of ACC dudes on film, and got himself drafted in the 5th round. He was pretty much consensus right where we ranked him: 193, 154, 193, 180. We drafted him 173. So right there, he was consistently ranked like a late 5th, early 6th round pick. That's where we picked him. And to have a guy that now slots in with a role where before we kind of would like have Dalton Kincaid play as that second tight end in the 6 O-line jumbo sets or Quentin Morris, and now we can say, hey, we know that you know what we're doing when we bring in Alec Anderson for the jumbo sets, but now we're going to have another guy with Dawson Knox who can just punch you right in the mouth. I love it. This is a fantastic fit as a tight end 3, and I'm going to put it. I think I'm even at a here to help. I like it that he has a carved out role already, and we know what he is, and I think he's got a clear line at a roster spot with special teams and blocking.
I have it as whatever we're calling the middle adequate.
Fine.
It's fine.
Good
for me. I don't love blocking tight ends. I know you need it. I do like having the skill players be able to do it.
Sure.
I think that is important. We've had those.
Dawson Knox probably one of the best examples.
Yes, I like the mix. I see the world. I do see where the NFL is going. I see the Bills doing those jumbo big packages and stuff. I'm honestly still pulling for Zach Davidson to be a bit of a thing because I think he gives you a little bit of both things and size and ability to stretch the seam. I still think quarterback EPA and passing is the most important things. And I don't know what Hawes does to benefit that. Maybe it is being able to bring in some extra protection and blocking and some of the run blocking things. Those are all fine and dandy, but it seems like a niche role. But to your point, I think the Bills will probably slot it right into tight end 3 and utilize that in some of the running packages and getting bigger. And hopefully that is a big benefit for the Bills in the run game. And this is almost probably an Aaron Cromer pick as much as it is anything else. And so I'm on board with whatever Aaron Cromer wants to do. But for me, it's just because it isn't such a well-rounded player, I couldn't go too
pretty
far.
One-dimensional. It's pretty one-dimensional. So, all right, as we pull him down, we got a great super chat here I want to bring up from Red Sand. As a football watcher and former athlete, all these picks are great. Our offense will function the same or better than last year. We needed to reload on defense, and that's exactly what we did. Thank you, Big Baller Bean. I think that's really fair. Like, all of us wanted this coming into it. I like a lot of people. I did think that maybe that 4th or 5th round pick would end up being a wide receiver if instead of trading up for Deone Walker, they traded up and took a receiver. I think a lot of people would have been fine. Now, a couple days later, if you told me that I could have my choice of Deone Walker plus Elijah Moore, I would probably take that over who was available at wide receiver later on. I think that there were some spots where maybe that could have worked. I don't know. Did Tate Felton go? I think he went in the end of the 3rd. So I don't think he was there when we traded up at the Deone Walker picks. I don't remember who the best receiver was available at that. I think maybe Torrey Horton was the guy that a lot of people were kind of hoping for. And he went before 132, which is where we were. So we would have had to trade up for him too. But, if you gave me that option, if I get Elijah Moore and Deone Walker, I'll take that upside swing versus Torrey Horton, where there's still the same unknown as some of the other spots. So I thought that was a good chat, and appreciate you, Red Sand, for sending that over. All right, now for a pick that I have a feeling you're going to be a fan of. If you want to go mathematically, this was actually our best value. Landon Jackson, I think being 26 spots ahead that early on day 2, a little bit overrides the Dorian strong value, but we picked him at 177. Consensus was 122. Dane Brugler was 115. PFF was 103. They average 113. The average of consensus, Brugler and PFF, was an early 4th round pick. He went 64 spots later to us at the first pick of the 6th round. He was easily rated as a 4th round value for what was there. I know Greg Cosell talked about some people talking about the best press man corner in the draft, his ability to play press. Not a phenomenal athlete. I think one of the more average RAS scores of what we saw, but still pretty good overall. Here at 8.33, so still a lot of that with totally the size 6'1", very good short area quickness. So his ability to turn and run and keep up there, and a fine 40.450, not anything negative. But Dorian Strong, a guy that when I had Marcus Whitman on the week before the draft, I asked him to pick out a player at each of at D tackle and at D end and at corner that he thought were the best fits for the Bills. And out of all the corners, he picked Dorian Strong as his number 1 fit as far as playing style and the kind of player that he saw as the best fit for the Bills. So just a player that I think pretty easily can be listed as here to help, and a guy that I think is probably not Dane Jackson's favorite player to see picked, because there's an awful lot of Dane Jackson here of just a really good physical corner who can come in and play and has some upside to be maybe even better.
Yeah, I said it at the beginning of the show. I think that there's a chance in this draft that we have a Kyrie Elam point Christian Benford 2.0 situation potential brewing here. I think this is a guy, from what I see, that could be maybe not year one, but I think this is a guy that could be your cornerback too on this Buffalo Bills defense. The weird thing is if you flip the scheme fits between Hairston and Strong, Hairston's actually more of a Bill scheme fit from what he did in college, more of a zone corner, where Strong is coming in as a more of a press corner. I believe in the Bills' ability to get Strong in his abilities to be a really good off coverage corner, but he's going to give you what everybody has been clamoring for the Bills to have, which is a guy that can get up and press and play physical at this cornerback position. He is a better tackler. I actually like his game more personally, especially at this value. Like, once you're here in the league, doesn't matter where you're picked. And I think he's gonna come in with a chip on his shoulder. He probably also feels like all the mock drafts and all those things that he was picked later than he should have been. I think he's gonna be a guy that this summer we're like, okay, wow, maybe we have to find a way to get him on the field. This is a guy who stands out on tape. Love the way he plays. I see the DNA feels like more of a Bills fit than Hairston, where the athleticism and schematic fit of Hairston stands out. Strong feels like he fits that McDermott DNA just a touch more to me.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. I think that's exactly what we see here. A guy who has a clear path to the roster. I'm curious. Bean talked a little bit about they think he has some nickel versatility as well. So another spot where maybe that gives you some competition there to see how do we get the best five guys on the field. So having him and Hancock both capable of playing nickel, and that Hancock can play nickel and safety, and Strong can play nickel and outside corner. And like you said, can make sure that Hairston doesn't see anything as a free, easy ticket here. I think Trey White is very much the veteran in the room, the break glass in case of emergency kind of guy. And I won't lie, after the Hairston and Strong pick, I now think it's going to be Dane Jackson is the veteran on the practice squad that we have there just in case. And we saw those guys last year. That's still an important role for this team. We know we saw Will Clapp come up and do that multiple times. We saw a lot of guys who were very valued parts of this team, but I remember seeing the way the guarantee structure was with Dane Jackson. He was basically guaranteed right above what the higher level of what a veteran makes on the practice squad. They basically guaranteed like, hey, you're going to get that amount of money anyways. And if you win a 53-man roster spot, even better. But then I have a feeling that's kind of where he's headed now after, because that was such a good pick. First pick of the 6th round to get a guy who was another 4th round pick, basically in that spot. A guy that was consensus ranking one spot ahead of Deone Walker in the overall between PFF, Dane Brugler, and the consensus board. He was 113 and Walker was 114. Yeah. So both of them were early 4th round picks, but we got one in the 6th round.
And honestly, this is just like, people need to remind themselves, when the Bills signed Dane Jackson, everyone was like, oh, great. Like, this is going to be our cornerback too. The Bills don't care about this position. It's like, it's a long off season. Yeah. Now he might struggle to make the team. Then there's still time to add guys. They still have more roster spots. There's going to be guys that they bring in for camp and stuff. This is part of the offseason. Acquisitions happen. Don't react to the early ones. It's not the final roster. They don't play football till September. So, but yeah, just kind of funny side note anecdote to how we are as fans. We're crazy.
Yeah. It's wild.
Yeah.
All right, 2 more picks here in the draft, and then 1 UDFA. The next one was Chase Lundt, who a guy that I discovered he was a human who existed when they picked him. I will say there was a handful of people on this train. He was on our guy, Judge Mathis. He was on his list to watch out for ahead of time. Another guy that, if not for how strong Dorian, actually, technically, the amount that we picked him ahead of where he was ranked was actually 3 spots ahead of Dorian Strong, because Chase Lundt, we took at 206 and he had an average of 139. He was ranked 133 on the consensus board, 123 in Dane Brugler, 162 in PFF. So again, ranked consistently as a 4th round pick. We got him as a late 6th round pick. And a guy that once you saw him is every bit of the, Cromer DNA that we've seen, looking just like Tylen Grable and Tommy Dorsey and Spencer Brown, and he's just that enormous build, but athleticism and a nasty streak, 6'7", 304, crazy long arms. Like, it's just that kind of guy that we've seen so many other times be molded into another piece. Some people think he can play guard possibly, but another piece to add in there at offensive line, and potentially the Alec Anderson jumbo offensive line replacement moving forward. He'll compete with Tylen Grable and now Ryan Vandermark.
Yeah. It's a myth for me, but or an adequate pick here for me, but would let Cromer take enough swings on some of these developmental guys, and one of them's bound to hit. What's super annoying to me right now is these graphics are really cool, but the kerning on his name with the space between the C and the A is killing me for those watching on YouTube right now. So I'm sorry to the whoever did that. You got to work on that. That one's killing me a little bit. But no, in terms of this pick, I want to give Aaron Cromer one guy every year to develop and have a project to work on. If this was his pick, I'm all for it. But it's so hard right now. This is a long-term development project for Cromer. This offensive line's so good and it's so deep that nobody's coming in right now and make an impact. This is something that Cromer's going to get to play with behind the scenes. He's probably going to get cut, make the practice squad, and allow Cromer to kind of work with him.
Yeah, it's one where, I don't expect that to be anything that sees the field anytime soon. Probably a game day inactive this first year, but we were surprised about Tylen Grable last year. He beat out Vandermark and took that job. So you want to leave that opportunity open, and taking those late 6th, 7th round swings over and over again with guys like Grable and Doyle, like that's how you hit on somebody like this. So we'll see where it goes and what it comes across. In the 7th round, the Buffalo Bills finally take a wide receiver. They take Maryland product Kaden Prather, a guy that, 6'3", 204, has some size to him, ran a decent 40, 4.46. A lot of there were some drops in a lot of the stuff that I read, some inconsistency, like everybody else. There's a reason he was a 7th round pick. I think that there's some special teams ability and some outside size that maybe you can play into, but we'll see where that comes across. He was pretty consistently ranked. Brugler had him as a UDFA. Consensus board was at 267, PFF at 230. So pretty much right there where we picked him at 240. Not anything special outside of there, but taking a stab here. I don't know that he has an inside track. I think he's got to beat out a Terrell Shavers to be able to make the roster here, and I think Shavers probably has a leg up on him. But
Virgil does
he'll
too.
have a shot. Yeah, correct. Jalen Virgil probably has a leg up on him, but you never know. Take a shot at him, see what he goes. RJ saying here, Prather, future New England Patriots practice squad poach. Great call by RJ.
Yeah, I think he'll be back on the Bills on the practice squad if they do like him enough. I watched so much Felton tape that I saw some Prather there, and it didn't do anything for me. The one thing I will say about Maryland in terms of drops and stuff, and you didn't see it as much from Felton, is the quarterback play in Maryland was terrible, and the offensive line play was bad. So that really impacted the wide receivers as well. But yeah, no, this was a pump the brakes for me. I don't care. I'm sure he'll either float around on the practice squad or get poached somewhere, not even be brought back. Because I do think the Bills have enough in that spot for that like final roster spot, practice squad, special teams player. They already have some options that they've already put development into that it's going to be hard for anyone to crack that. And there's going to be only
Prather can now get in that line. He can get in that line to try to work himself up into that Shavers Virgil area.
Sure.
So we didn't do a lot of work here on UDFAs. There's a handful of guys. I know there was a guy, an Arkansas State guard that some people liked. We brought in the punter from UB, but there was one player that stood out, and I saw kind of a drumbeat from a lot of different people that had him. He was ranked as a draftable prospect, but similar, he was actually teammates with Jackson Hawes at Yale for 3 years. Then he graduated and went to play at went over and got himself into New Hampshire.
Big time.
And then played well. Wande Owens played safety, was a captain at Yale, and then a captain in New Hampshire. Ridiculous RAS score. came in 9.59, 43-inch vertical, 11-foot broad. Those are crazy. 5'11", 205, 18 reps on the bench, ran solid, good numbers here. So again, just a guy that with the Hancock pick probably hurts his odds there, but this is a guy where if I told you at cut down day somebody beat out Derek Forrest for that fourth safety spot, I don't think it's crazy that a guy like this could be able to make a run at that kind of spot or be a really fun developmental guy on the practice squad. So just a guy that stood out to me, from being able to, out of all the practice squad dart throws that we throw out there, every once in a while somebody does work out and crack the roster, and I thought this was a possibility.
Yeah, I think this is additionally Cam Lewis is on notice on this roster because I think you can have Hancock maybe take over the Cam Lewis role and then have this guy take over what Cam Lewis's role used to be, which was an undrafted free agent who was on your practice squad and got cut multiple times and made his way back and fully kind of developed into that role. And honestly,
and Jamarcus Ingram as well. Cam Lewis and Jamarcus Ingram both equally on notice.
Same type of same type of role as that type of super athletic DB. These are the swings that you want to take in this type of way. I have not had a chance to watch any film. I don't even know if there is any New Hampshire film out there.
Yeah, you find some New Hampshire Yale film.
I might have to trade market. Yeah, some black market film trades. But the athleticism is cool. But it just tells me that the Bills are looking for these types of like hybrid athletic dudes to maybe take over this role, and that like Cam Lewis maybe has maxed out his ability in that role, and they're looking for maybe a little more high end on that.
Yeah. So again, it's UDFA. No, I'm not saying there's any likelihood that's there, but out of all the guys there, it's someone who stood out to me. And part of the reason was that we didn't bring in Tugbuck because the Vikings beat us to him. This majestic human from Idaho State, we missed out on because the Vikings beat us to Tugbuck. So it's a sad day. We could have brought in this beautiful, beautiful man.
Yeah. He does look like he belongs in a place like Buffalo or Minnesota.
Correct. Correct.
He belongs in somewhere northern and cold.
Yes, correct.
Yes.
He sleeps in a tent, hunts his own food by hand.
Yeah, looks like it. All right, let's get it.
Now gone through the entire draft class. We talked about Elijah Moore. We talked about arguments on the radio. Anything else that we need to talk about for the people?
No, man. This gets into the worst part of the offseason. Now we complain so much about draft season and all that stuff, and now that it's over, it stalls out a little bit here. But I'm excited, man. I love the way this roster is coming together. I think my next thing is kind of piece this, what I think a depth chart is going to look like, and look at these positions, maybe see where some holes are remaining. I try to warn people all the time, the draft is just one part of player acquisition. Brandon Beane's for sure not done. They're allowed to add players all the way into November. The trade deadline doesn't end till then. So Brandon Beane is going to still add some players. I'm excited to see them get through camp. Football is going to start ramping up. The sun's going to start coming up here in the Buffalo Northeast area. And that just means football is going to get closer and closer.
I can't wait. Yeah, as we go forward here, we're going to take you guys through all of the positional breakdowns. Like Aaron said, that we'll go through the new additions, potential starting battles, cut down day, trade candidates, cut candidates, all kinds of different things. I do think some of the draft picks here put some interesting guys on the block as far as cut down day trade candidates, especially adding a guy like Lundt. Does that make Ryan Vandermark a trade cut down day trade candidate? Does Landon Jackson make AJ Epinesa expendable? Does Dane Jackson become a cut down day? The kind of positions where people trade for on cut down day are offensive line, defensive line, corner. Like those are spots where people have a little bit of value. Could Brandon Beane recoup and add to a little bit of 2026 draft capital by trading away some of those guys that are there? So we'll see where that comes along. We'll go through each of those positions all the way from now, taking you right up to training camp, getting you ready for the 2025 season. If you want to be part of that, come over and hang out with us. Go to cover1.net/1pass, become a 1Pass member, join us in the Discord, come and hang out. It's an awesome group. Tons of discussion today on Elijah Moore and on all the draft picks. It was fantastic during the draft with everybody there. It's been a lot of fun. So if you want to come over and find the best way to support us, you can go over there and help us out, or support our fantastic sponsors like William Attar Law Offices, Hurt in a Car, call William Attar, 844-444-4444. Fantastic guys to work with over there. We appreciate everything they do for us.
Yes, sir.
All right, guys. We appreciate everybody here. It's been a fun show tonight. On behalf of fantastic producer Chris Kepner and Aaron Quinn, I am Greg Tompsett. You've been listening to Cover One Buffalo, and we are out.